Before we part company, I want to expose one of the most obscure details of the Quran to demonstrate the direct correlation between Islam and the tragic events unfolding before our eyes. Between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, real prophets named Daniel, Ezekiel, and Isaiah, and a former fisherman named John, foretold events that would shadow our last days. Central to their prognostications was that an international coalition led by Gog, the leader of Magog, would attack Israel. They also warned that a nation known for its wings and naval prowess, a land across the sea, divided by rivers, an aggressive, fair-skinned people who had separated themselves from God, America, would be pruned back like a diseased grapevine. So what? Israel has been invaded more times than Mohammed had concubines, and America remains the undisputed heavyweight champ of the world. Well, the first snip of the pruning shears was 9/11. The second was the trillion-dollar impact on the nation's economy. The third was the bloodletting in Iraq, where Americans engendered the wrath of the world and gained nothing. This predicted war isn't Badr, a skirmish between militants and merchants. It's World War III. To borrow a phrase from a former tyrant, this will be the mother of all battles. The prophets appear to be saying that Gog, most likely the leader of a combined Iran-Iraq at the time, will form an alliance entirely comprised of Islamic nations, the legacy of Mohammed. Egypt, Syria, Ethiopia, Libya, the Sudan, Iraq, and Turkey will join the southern tier of Islamic nations that comprise the Russian Federation, the Stans and the Chechens. Collectively, they will unleash hell's fury. Beginning with their normal pincer attack, Egypt and Syria will break a peace treaty to simultaneously assault Israel from the north and from the south. The conflict will devolve into a chemical, biological, and nuclear war. But the Muslims will lose. 1 billion of Muhammad's followers and 500 million infidels will die over the course of a year and a half. 1/3 of the earth's surface will be scorched. America, weakened and humiliated, will protest. A united Europe will answer the call and defend Israel, but not for the sake of the Jews, of course. An unholy trinity will covet what belongs to Yahweh, His promised land and His people. The catalyst for this war will be as all others. A wolf in sheep's clothing will use it to affirm a land for peace treaty that will broker a temporary peace between Israel and her Muslim neighbors, guaranteeing security for the Jews in the promised land. This world leader will arise from what was the intersection of Alexander the Great's Grecian Empire and the Roman Empire. He will become the Antichrist. His allies will be Satan and the false prophet. You know who Satan is, so a word about the other guy. He will be an ecumenical religious leader, uniting much of the world into a single, universal, and tolerant doctrine. His religion will be closely allied with that of ancient Babylon, the same religion that forms the basis of both Catholicism and Islam. The implied pruning of America is because we've separated ourselves from Yahweh, and it certainly sounds bad, as does the death of 1/4 of the earth's population. But what obscure detail in the Quran, you may be asking, led to this horrific peek at our destiny? The answer is Gog and Magog. Allah mentions them twice, once in Quran 1894, then again in 2196. Since Muhammad was illiterate and Allah was dumb as a stone, the source of this material is obvious. It came from Yathrib rabbis. They knew Yahweh's prophecies, and they understood their implications. But not knowing any better, Muhammad included within his own scriptures the very event that would one day lay his legacy to ruin. In a surah insightfully named
The Prophets,
we find this jewel.
Quran 21:92. Verily, this brotherhood of Islam is a single religion, and I am your Lord, therefore worship me. But later generations broke into fragment as regards to their religion, one from another.
This generation of Muslims has spent more time fighting amongst themselves than attacking infidels, but the Bible, and through it the Koran, predicts that this will soon change.
Yet they will all return to us,
to make war on Israel.
Therefore whoever shall do good,
fighting,
deeds as a believer, there shall be no denying of his exertion, and surely we will write it down for him in his book of deeds.
Then speaking of Jews, it says,
But there is a ban on any population which we have destroyed, that they shall not return until Gog and Magog are let loose from their barrier, and they swoop down, swarming from every hill, letting loose and breaking forth from every elevated place. Then will the true promise of doom draw nigh. Behold, the disbelieving infidels will be terrorized, staring in horror. Woe to us! Alas, we made a state heedless of this. We did wrong.
Wise and cunning as ever, the Jews who sold Mohammed his scripture infused it with an admonition. Do not build a state without heeding this warning. But this is exactly what Israel has done. Yet 1400 years ago, Yathrib Jews hooked Mohammed. He took the bait and swam with it, not knowing that he was being used to predict his own demise.
Quran 21:98. Verily, you disbelieving infidels, and the gods that you worship besides Allah, are the fuel for hell, faggots for the fire. Certainly you will enter it. Had their idols been real ilah, or gods, they would have kept them out of hell. Therein sobbing will be your lot, breathing with deep sighs, roaring. You will hear nothing but wailing and groaning.
He calls this,
in Quran 21 verse 103, the greatest terror, the supreme horror, the fearful event. The angels will meet them. This is the day
of doom,
of which you were promised, the day that we shall roll up the world like a scroll, a promise binding on us. Surely we will bring it about.
Amongst all this hate speech, there is a problem. Allah is allegedly talking to disbelieving infidels, but they, according to Muhammad, were never to see this book. So why are these threats here? What purpose do they serve? Dumb to the bitter end, Muhammad ends his prophecy by confirming that the source of his inspiration was the Bible, although he got the section wrong.
Quran 21 verse 105. Certainly we wrote this prophecy before in the scripture given to Moses. The message, my righteous slaves shall inherit the earth.
The Gog prophecy is in Ezekiel, not the Torah. And Muslims will never inherit the earth, although they will die trying. The Islamic Mahdi, known in Ezekiel as Gog, will in fact bring a day of doom. As you listen to this next verse, remember that the words and phrases inside of the parentheses are not mine. They were added by the translators so that we might understand what Allah is saying.
Quran 21 verse 106. Verily in this
Quran
is a message, a plain statement for folks who worship Allah,
and for those who act practically on the Sunnah, the legal ways of the Prophet.
And we sent you,
Muhammad,
not as but a mercy for mankind and jinns. Say,
Muhammad,
it is revealed to me that your Ilah,
God,
is only one Ilah,
God.
Will you submit to his will?
And become Muslims?
But if they,
disbelievers, Christians and Jews,
turn away
from Islam,
say, I give notice
of war,
to be known to all, but I know not whether the
torment which you were
threatened is nigh or far.
It is nigh. The second prophecy of
the great terror,
proceeding from the Magog,
sweeping swarm,
comes from a surah entitled
The Cave.
But before we read the story, I'd like to turn your attention to a footnote in the Ahmed Ali translation. It says,
Quran commentators identify dual Karnain with Alexander the Great of Macedonia, as he is the closest in his travels, wisdom, and
Islamic
prophethood to the description.
The problem with the theory is that Alexander was a pagan. He said that he was a sun god, and he died in a drunken stupor. He never mentioned Allah, the moon god of Mecca, nor visited his rock house.